Hey, so I feel like everybody sort of fell off the vlog thing, which is fine, but I had been thinking about doing a post about all the books that I read in 2018, and I don't feel like doing all that typing because I don't have a computer here. I just have like my phone and my iPad, and I really hate doing a lot of typing on like devices. It just doesn't feel good, and that's kind of why I don't update LiveJournal so much because of all the typing. So this works. I read 52 books in 2018. I finished the final book, number 52, with 5 minutes to go in the new year. That does not include the 20 odd Magic Treehouse books that I read with Oliver. And it does not include children's books, but these are, grown up books. So I thought I would do a little rundown of what I read in 2018. So I started out the year pretty strong in January. I read 6 books. I read The Future Home of the Living God by Louise Eldridge, which was an interesting kind of. I read a lot of like post apocalyptic books this year, but that was kind of one where like society was crumbling, and yeah, it was an interesting one. What I talk about when I talk about Running by Haruki Murakami, which was really interesting. I like Haruki Murakami, and I'd actually bought this book for my sister-in-law and forgot to give it to her. And so I read it, and it was good. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman, which was really good. 1+1 by Jojo Moyes. Jojo Moyes is the one who wrote Me Without You. And I like her books. They're easy reads. They're usually interesting. I don't actually remember what this one is about. Artemis by Andy Weir. He's the guy who wrote The Martian. This is one about people living on the moon. Science fiction. It was pretty good. Only Dead on the Inside by James Breakwell, which is actually, it was a book that I had bought for Sean for Christmas. It had some funny parts. It was like about parenting. It was okay. So that's what I read in January. In February, I read 3 books. The Music Shop by Rachel Joyce, which was pretty good. It was like set in like a music store in like I think the 80s, and it was a guy who, only sold records, and he had this like ability to look at someone and know what song they needed to hear. So a little bit of magical realism, which is something that I've realized I really, really enjoy. So also a lot of these are from the Book of the Month Club, which I have a membership. That's one of the things that like my mother-in-law and my husband's aunt tend to give me membership stuff like credits for my birthday and Christmas. So that's where a lot of these books came from, which is nice because a lot of times it's books that I wouldn't otherwise pick up on my own. But given, the selection of 5 books every month, and then I pick one, and it's very low risk to pick something that I might not otherwise pick. So in February, I read The Music Shop. Second one was Sewing Activewear by Joanna Lindstrom, which was more of a nonfiction sewing reference book about sewing activewear, because I do like to make my own activewear. I'd like to be more active this year to necessitate more activewear. But yeah. And then All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders, which is another kind of magical realism type book. I guess that one veered maybe into fantasy, but that one was really good. I read 1 book in March, and it was Someday, Someday Maybe by Lauren Graham, who played Lorelai on the Gilmore Girls. And it was okay. It was an okay book, The other thing I do is something called BookBub, where like every day I get this email with like cheap ebooks. So it's like, oh, this book is 99 cents or this book is $2. And so then I read a lot of books that way too. In April, I read 5 books. Starter for 10 by David Nichols, which was terrible, 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 terrible. I feel like it got a lot of buzz when it came out a few years ago. And I kind of wish that I hadn't finished it because it was just awful. Wasn't a dude in college, and he was just insufferable and blah. Design Flaws of the Human Condition by Paul Schmidberger. I don't remember now what that one was about, but I feel like I liked it. The Sewing Machine by Natalie Forge, I think. Forge or I can't read my own handwriting. I liked that one. It sort of followed this sewing machine through time and different people that, like the woman who, had made the sewing machine and a woman who used the sewing machine. And, it was just interwoven lives, which is another genre of fiction that I enjoy, is like, oh, there's 5 people and then, oh, suddenly we realize that all their lives intertwine somehow. Hidden Sea by Gregory Maguire, which was a good one. That one, because Hidden Sea, that was the one, I think that was the Nutcracker one. He's the one that does those like retold fairy tales, like Wicked. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hidden Sea, I think that was the Nutcracker one. And then The Paris Wife by Paula McLean, which is about Ernest Hemingway's first wife. And that one was pretty good. In May, I read 6 books. I read A Duke Like No Other by Valerie Bowman, because Regency romance novels are also one of my favorite genres, although I'm very picky about my romance novels. I want them to be like this much smutty, but I want them to be like well written, and I want the stories to be interesting, and I like when they're funny. So I'm very picky. I don't read a lot, but I do enjoy a good smutty Regency romance. Sorry, I had to pause that. It's quiet time, which is when Oliver refuses to take a nap, but when he's supposed to stay in his room, and he came out. So, okay. And then the next book, number 17 of the year, was After Alice, which is another Gregory Maguire book. And this one was about Alice in Wonderland. And it was about like another girl going down the rabbit hole and kind of like what happened. And so that one was really interesting. Then The Patron Saint of Liars by Anne Patchett. And I remember liking this one, but I don't remember what it's about. The House of Bradbury by Nicole Meyer, which is about this woman who like buys Ray Bradbury's house, and like, I don't know, it was okay. It was okay. Rogues Rush In by Tessa Dare and Christy Caldwell. Tessa Dare is my absolute favorite Regency romance novel author. Her character is always really funny, and the relationships are not like weird. And they're not quite as problematic as some other romance novels can be. The Last to See Me by, I just have M. Dressler here. I guess M. Dressler. That was a good one. That one was about like a ghost. And in this like society similar to ours, but where like, ghosts are like, when they're detected, they're eradicated. And this ghost has like hung around, and she has this house, and people want to buy it and they want to get rid of her, and she doesn't want them to. So that one was really good. In June, I read 4 books. Paris for One and Other Stories by Jojo Moyes. The Bookseller by Cynthia Swanson. That one was good. That one was where like this woman owns this bookstore, but she keeps having these dreams of like another life where like she's married and has kids, and she starts like being unsure of like her reality and which life is the life and which one's the dream. And so that one was pretty good. Erotic Stories for Punjabi Widows by Bali Kaur Jasral. Probably, I can't read my handwriting. That one was, that was a cute one about this girl that she's supposed to be teaching English to these like Punjabi widows in London, and instead they're all writing erotic stories. It's not like smutty, but it was very cute. In the Kingdom of Men by Kim Barnes. That was one of my BookBub suggestions. That was interesting. It was about this woman who moved to Saudi Arabia in like the 60s when all the oil companies were sprouting up, and kind of her life. And there's a little bit of a mystery there and some classicism. And so it was interesting knowing that I was coming to the Middle East. And then in July, I read 3 books. I read Spinning Silver by Naomi Novak, which that one was really, really good. That was like a fantasy one about this woman who was the daughter of a money collector, and she is very good at collecting money. And then there's this like supernatural king who wants her to turn silver into gold. And she goes to his kingdom and then, yeah. So it was good. It was fantasy. I like fantasy. That one was good. The Last Equation of Isaac Severy by Nora Jacobs. That was another Book of the Month Club one. That one was really good. It was sort of like a mystery, but like not like a suspenseful mystery or anything like that. But that one was good. The Small Rain by Madeline L'Engle. I guess that was like that. Like it's the first novel that she ever wrote, like way before like Wrinkle in Time and everything. And it was okay, just not really my style. In August, I read 5 books. Too Wild to Be Wed by Eloisa James, which that's another one of my Regency romance novels. Eloisa James, I like her a lot. And then another one in that series, Born to Be Wild, also by Eloisa James, because they like to do, a lot of these authors like to do series where it's like, you know, they'll be like a family with a bunch of brothers and then like, oh, this brother and has his story. And then like the next story is like his brother or like his friend or his sister or whatever. And you get to know some of the characters and there's reoccurring characters and like sort of not so much overarching storylines. Like you can definitely read them like independently. And then another Tessa Dare. This one was The Governess Game, another Tessa Dare. And then Believe Me by Eddie Izzard, which was his autobiography, which was very interesting. So that was a good one. Uprooted by Naomi Novak. That's the same author as Spinning Silver. And this one was another fantasy one where like this girl in a village and there's this magician that like protects the village, but he like every 10 years like takes a girl and then she's the girl and magic and it's interesting. Then in September, I read 3 books. Vox by Christina Delcher, which was like so disturbing. And it was like in a world where, you know, the Christian right has come to majority power and now women can't speak and they're only allowed 100 words a day. And it was just like, it sort of went back and forth between the timelines of like the present time of what's going on and then like how it all happened. And it was so like, so scary, like how she wrote about it happening, because you're just like, oh my God, like the way she writes it, it could totally happen. Gentlemen Prefer Spinsters, another Regency romance, which I needed something very light after Vox because it was like kind of depressing. That one is by Samantha Holt. The Naked Duke by Sally Mackenzie, which was terrible. It was terrible. It was like one, again, it was a book club one and I read it, but it was really awful, like awful Regency romance. In October, I read 3 books, although the first one was Lethal White by Robert Galbraith, which is J.K. Rowling's alter ego, where she writes the Cormoran Strike books, which are kind of dark. And this one, like, this is the 4th in the series, I think. And like, it took so long to get going, but then it was really interesting and I couldn't put it down. And I think I stayed up until like 1 o'clock in the morning reading it one time. The Dinner List by Rebecca Searle, which that was another Book of the Month Club one where like this woman shows up to her birthday dinner and it's like all these people from her past, including Audrey Hepburn of all people. The Philosopher's Flight by Tom Miller, which was an interesting one where it's like sort of an alternate history timeline where like back in the Civil War, people discovered that they could do magic and women especially were very good at doing magic and they were using magic in the military. And then so it sort of has come up and it's like a women's only thing. But then this guy, like his mom and sisters are magicians and he wants to be a magician and goes to magician school. And it was good. It was interesting because it was sort of, there was a little bit of like a reverse sexism. Not really reverse. I mean, sexism is sexism, but you know, where because he was a man, he couldn't be expected to do this. He was just a little man, couldn't do what these, you know, strong women could do. So it was kind of interesting. November was a pretty big month for reading. I read 6 books. Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore by Robin Sloan, which was pretty good. Kind of a, again, sort of like a mystery. Taft by Anne Patchett, which I read about half of it and then put it down and then picked it back up. But that one was interesting. It was like set in Memphis and there was a little bit of Like I had a hard time figuring out the time period that it was set in. Yeah, I don't know. It was okay. Ella Minnow P by Mark Dunn, which was an interesting one where it was like this island, off the coast of, I don't know, like North Carolina, where people slowly were losing the use of certain letters in the alphabet and sort of how society broke down. The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton. That one was a really good one. Again, like one of the narrators is a ghost. I always find those very interesting, and kind of multiple viewpoints. And that one was good. 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas by Marie Helene Bertino. That was a cute one. It was like a little girl who wants to be a jazz singer and then a jazz club that's like shutting down. And The Afterwife by Gigi Lavangi Fraser, which is like this woman, like her husband dies and then all of a sudden she can hear ghosts. And yeah. It was a cute story. And then December was a pretty big reading month. I read 4 books because I was nearing the end of my 50 book goal and I really wanted to get there. So Uncommon Type, which was a collection of short stories by Tom Hanks, which was pretty good. I wasn't really sure if I would like it or not, but I did. 9 Perfect Strangers by Leanne Moriarty, which she's one she wrote Big Little Lies, and she's wrote a lot of them and a lot of different books. And I really like them, like The Hymn to His Wife and The Anniversary and Forgetting Alice. So I enjoyed this one. It was, again, one of those, like, these people, all 9 different people, they show up at this like wellness retreat and things go like off the rails. Like at one point I put the book down and looked at Sean and I'm just like, so that was a really good one. Behind the Scenes at the Museum by Kate Atkinson. I read another book by her a couple years ago called Life After Life that I really, really, really loved. And this one was also good, but this was another one that I had started and put down and picked up again. And I really should have started it over from the beginning because I was a little confused. And there's a lot of jumping between like timelines. And then Heartburn by Nora Ephron, which was okay. I thought I would like it more than I did, but it was okay. And then I was so close to getting my 50 and I was reading a book that I wasn't sure if I was going to finish. And so then I read Metro Girl by Janet Ivanovich because I knew I'd be able to knock it out in like a day and a half. And it was not that great. Janet Ivanovich is the one she writes the Stephanie Plum books, like the one for the money, two for the road or something. This was terrible. It was terrible, but it got me to 50 books, which is what I wanted. And then I finally did finish Priest Daddy by Patricia Lockwood, which I know a lot of people liked, but I didn't like it that much. Part of that could have been that I was reading it before bed and kept falling asleep. But I just didn't, I don't know. There were parts of it that were entertaining, but like other parts of it, I was just like, God, your parents are terrible and your dad is an asshole. And then the last book that I read that I finished 5 minutes before the year ended was Silver Angel by Johanna Lindsey, which was another romance novel. And it was about like a girl who gets caught by white slavers and sent, and she's part of a harem. And then there's twins and mistaken identity. It was terrible. It was terrible. Terrible. But that took me to 52 books, and those are the 52 books that I read in 2018. This is now almost 20 minutes long, so I don't know if anybody is still watching, but I am setting another goal of 50 books again this year, and we will see how that goes.